Margaret Simons, one of the great experts of Simone de Beauvoir from the University of Southern Illinois, brought the issue of the faulty translation to the attention of the public as early as 1983 in a path-breaking article, The Silencing of Simone de Beauvoir, Guess What's Missing from the Second Sex, and then a book published in 1999, Beauvoir and the Second Sex, about the need for a new translation. Another and more important reason why this is no ordinary translation. The Second Sex is encyclopedic in nature. One can only wonder how one person wrote it. 800 pages of biology, psychology, anthropology, ethnology, social science, history, folklore, literature, economic systems, labor movements, religion, laws, and most important, myths. Myths about women and their liberation. We spent 4 years not only translating, but also researching the deuxième sexe. We scrupulously consulted experts across many constituencies in France, England, and in the United States. A tremendous amount of fact-checking and searching for her many references was involved. Questions naturally arose about the act of translating itself, about ourselves, our roles, and about our responsibilities both to Simone de Beauvoir and you, her readers. Translation has always been fraught with such questions, and different times have produced different conceptions about translation. Perhaps this is why, while great works of art seldom age, translations do. It is our firm conviction, and one shared by the publishing houses we work with, and in accordance with current translation theory, that the job of the translator is not to simplify or readapt the text for a foreign or modern audience, but to find or to come close to finding the voice of the original work as it was written for its time and with its original intent. When the text is iconic like The Second Sex, whose impact on society was so decisive, the task of bringing into English an understanding and appreciation of Simone de Beauvoir's voice is greater still. We have translated the deuxième sexe, unabridged and unsimplified, maintaining Beauvoir's philosophical language. The long and dense paragraphs that were changed in the first translation to conform to more traditional styles of punctuation, or even eliminated, have now been translated all within the confines of English. Long paragraphs, sometimes going on for pages, are a stylistic aspect of her writing that is essential, integral to the development of her arguments. Cutting her sentences, cutting her paragraphs, using a more traditional and conventional punctuation do not render Simone de Beauvoir's voice. Simone de Beauvoir's style expresses her reasoning. Her prose has a grammar of its own, and that grammar follows a logic. One of the difficulties was her extensive use of the semicolon, a punctuation mark that has suffered setbacks over the past decades in English and in French, and has somewhat fallen into disuse. But they're all there. The reader will see some inconsistent punctuation and style, most evident in quotations and extracts. Indeed, while we were tempted to standardize it, we carried Beauvoir's style into English as much as possible. We also took the decision to keep close to Beauvoir's tense usage, not wanting to second-guess her even when we found the usage somewhat inconsistent. This occurs most noticeably with the French use of the present tense for the historical past. We did not modernize the language Beauvoir used and the language that she had access to in 1949. This decision precluded the use of the word gender, for example, as applied today. Simone de Beauvoir uses the word sex. We relied heavily on etymological dictionaries and found that many words that we thought were new turned out not to be, and vice versa. Nor did we update the language by making it gender sensitive. Take, for example, the sentence, I quote, "Whether the mirror as such plays a more or less considerable role, what is sure is that the child at about 6 months of age begins to understand his parents' miming and to grasp himself under their gaze as an object. It is jarring today to hear the masculine pronoun only used for the word child, when today we would say his or her, his/her, whatever, he, she. But of course, we could not embroider gender-sensitive language onto Simone de Beauvoir's French. Besides, in French, there is a dictum in French grammar, le masculin emporte sur le féminin. The masculine takes precedence over the feminine. One particularly complex and compelling issue was how to translate la femme. In the deuxième sexe, the term has at least two meanings, the woman, or woman, and at times wife and women, depending on the context. Woman in English, used alone without an article, captures woman as an institution, a construct, a concept, femininity, determined and defined by society, by culture and history. Thus, in a French sentence such as "Le problème de la femme a toujours été un problème d'homme," we have used woman without an article. The problem of woman has always been a problem of men. Another example, and I'll give you the English only, to show the use of man and woman without the article. Man is a sexed human being. Woman is a complete individual and equal to the male only if she too is a sexed human being. Beauvoir also occasionally uses femme without an article to signify woman as determined by society, as we just described. In such cases, we do the same. The famous sentence, "On ne naît pas femme, on le devient," is translated by H.M. Partially as, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman." Our translation reads, "One is not born, but rather becomes woman." Here we understand Beauvoir is talking about woman as a construct, not born, but determined. Another notable change we made was in the translation of La Jeune Fille. This is the title of an important chapter, La Jeune Fille, dealing with the period in a female's life between childhood and adulthood. While it is often translated as the young girl, by Partially and other translators of other French works, when the expression La Jeune Fille is used, we clearly think it means the girl, and we translated that chapter as the girl. Beauvoir uses few footnotes in the deuxième sexe, for which scholars have severely criticized her. We respected her text. When we felt we had to add some information or correct some discrepancies, we added a few annotations of our own. We mention this because many scholars passionately wanted an annotated version with detailed explanations for the reader. But the publishers never even considered an annotated version as an option. We also did not facilitate the reading by annotating arcane references or references she makes to different philosophical points or the philosophical language that she uses. But we feel that now that there is a faithful translation, it would be a good idea, if anybody out there is interested, to do an annotated volume. It could be very useful. These are but a few of the issues we dealt with. We had instructive discussions with generous experts about these points, and we listened to many, sometimes contradictory, opinions. But in the end, the final decision as to how to treat the translation was ours. The French newspaper Libération had this to say when Simone de Beauvoir died. Et si le plus philosophe des deux n'était pas celui qu'on croit? Translated, what if the more philosopher of the two, Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre, was not the one we think? It is generally agreed that one of the most serious absences in the first translation was Simone de Beauvoir, the philosopher. We were mindful of the need to put the philosopher back into her text. Much recent work has been done on reclaiming, valorizing, and expanding upon her role as philosopher, thanks to the scholarship of Margaret Simons and others. To transpose her philosophical style and voice into English was the most crucial task we faced. The Second Sex is a philosophical treatise, and one of the most important books of the 20th century, upon which much of the modern feminist movement was built. Beauvoir, the philosopher, is present right from the start of the book, building on the ideas of Hegel, Marx, Kant, Heidegger, Husserl, and others. She developed and shared and appropriated these concepts alongside her equally brilliant contemporaries, Sartre, Merleau-Ponty, and Lévi-Strauss, who were redefining philosophy to fit the times. Before it was even published, Beauvoir read Lévi-Strauss's Elementary Structures of Kinship, and she learned and used those ideas in The Second Sex. It's often footnoted. In addition to failing to capture Beauvoir's philosophical and expository style, the first English translation did not always recognize the philosophical terminology in The Second Sex. Take, for example, the crucial word authentic, meaning to be in good faith. Partially changed it into real, genuine, true. The distinctive existentialist term pour soi, usually translated as for itself, pour soi referring to human consciousness, became her true nature in itself. Thus, Parsley's being in itself, en soi, lacking human consciousness, is a reversal of Simone de Beauvoir's meaning. Scholars have unearthed and brought to light many other examples, such as the use of words like alienation, alterity, subject, intentionality, ambiguity, bad faith, embodiment, to mention a few. This vocabulary was essential to existentialism and was, most times, dumbed down in the first translation. One particularly striking example for us is the title of Volume 2, where l'expérience vécue, which is lived experience, was translated as Woman's Life Today, weakening the philosophical tenor of the French and making it sound a bit like a ladies' magazine. And mind you, we have nothing against ladies' magazines, but not here. Although the ideas and concepts are challenging, the book, as she wrote it in 1949, was immediately accepted by a general readership. The big surprise is that it became a bestseller, and there were at least 77 reprintings in the first year alone. Not only were intellectuals and academics reading it, but a general public of women and men, young and old, shop girls and factory workers were buying and devouring it. Today, there is a renewal of interest in Simone de Beauvoir, in her philosophical and political ideas. Our goal in this, our translation, has been to craft a challenging and readable text that says what Simone de Beauvoir said as closely as possible to the way she said it. We hope it can restore The Second Sex to its original glory and all of its philosophical, sociological, psychological, historical, political, and literary manifestations.